So we have Tesla, SpaceX, Boring Company, Neuralink, X, formerly known as Twitter, and XAI. And if you ask yourself, what do all these companies have in common? You'll quickly find that they have the same leader, Elon Musk. Now, if you combine the value of all these companies, you'll arrive to a number around $1 trillion. And if you compare that to, say, the size of an economy of a country, these companies combined are about as big as the economies of the Netherlands, Turkey, and Switzerland. Now, when you think about this level of success, it's probably going to be very hard to convince somebody that this is by accident. There has to be something there outside of dedication, a high pain tolerance, and a lot of sacrifice. There has to be some sort of formula that Elon Musk has figured out that he's deployed to be this successful. Now, lucky for us, Walter Isaacson, who's a very famous author and wrote the biography of Steve Jobs, just released a book on Elon Musk. This book has a ton of information on how Elon Musk carries his daily lives, but most importantly, we have a very good idea of how Elon Musk approaches business building and figuring out how to build successful businesses. What's really cool about the findings in this book is that these methods can be applied to any industry in any business. It should be very easy to see how you can craft this methodology to whatever you're working on. And it probably doesn't even have to be a business. It could be something that you are working towards that you're trying to achieve. And when I read that methodology, it reminded me so much of my time at Tesla from 2017 to 2021, where I spent a little bit over 4 years in various leadership positions. We're super lucky to have somebody like Walter who was able to get into Elon's brain and put this down on paper for all of us to absorb. Now, it's best to divide this methodology in 3 different sections. Let's go ahead and start with the algorithm, which is going to be a method to maximize the chance of success on whatever you're working on. This is designed so that whatever you're working on is as efficient as it can be. It doesn't weigh you down. It doesn't stress you out, but the process to get there will require a lot of hard work and dedication. There are 5 steps in the algorithm, and we'll start with the first one, which is question every requirement. There are many examples in the book where Elon Musk is running around from company to company, from worker to worker, and constantly asking the question, why is this here? Why are we using this? Is this really necessary? I'm going to read you exactly how Elon Musk describes this process so that you can fully understand where he's coming from. Each requirement should come with the name of the person who made it. You should never accept that a requirement came from a department, such as from the legal department or the safety department. You need to know the name of the real person who made the requirement. Then you should question it no matter how smart that person is. Requirements from smart people are the most dangerous because people are less likely to question them. Always do so regardless of who it comes from, even your boss and yourself. Then make the requirements less dumb. The overarching theme here is that you should never be afraid to ask why something exists, even if it's from your boss's boss's boss, or something that you created, or something that somebody else created that you're trying to implement in something you're working on. Always ask why and never be afraid to ask why. Number 2, delete any part or process you can. Here's an excerpt from the book that describes why this methodology is important. You may have to add the part or process back later. In fact, if you do not end up adding back at least 10% of those steps, then you didn't delete enough. The thought process here is that one shouldn't be afraid to really yank stuff out to try and speed up something or to remove things that could potentially break. And if you do end up breaking something, that means that you've pushed far enough to understand if that thing is actually needed. And so not being afraid to make something fail or something break is extremely important here, because otherwise you won't have the bravery to go in and actually yank stuff out. Number 3, simplify and optimize. Now, this one's very important to do after you delete or yank out any process or part from step 2. After you've yanked everything out and you're left with the pieces you actually need, you should spend a lot of time simplifying and optimizing those specific steps so that the thing you're building is as efficient as possible. Number 4, accelerate cycle time. Every process can be sped up, but only do this after you have followed the first 3 steps. Do not waste time accelerating processes that shouldn't exist. And number 5, automate. Take all of the above and figure out how the process can exist without human oversight. Now that you've built something that's very efficient, doesn't have any extra steps, it's not bloated, and it's working as well as it could, one should figure out how to remove themselves from the equation and have that thing work on its own. That will achieve two very good outcomes. The first one is that the thing will never stop working because it's automated and you don't have to be there to make sure that it works. And it also frees up the time of whoever is working on that thing, and it allows that person to work on potentially more important things. Now, each one of these steps is pretty difficult to execute on their own, and so it's important to have the proper mindset, the proper team rules, and the proper guiding principles to ensure that everybody has the right mindset to execute the algorithm. And that, of course, includes your team and yourself. And before we get into those rules, if you're enjoying this content so far, I would love it if you throw me a like. And if you want to support the channel, super easy. All you have to do is click subscribe. Thank you so much. All technical managers must have hands-on experience. Here's an excerpt from the book where Elon Musk describes an example where this is very relevant. For example, managers of software teams must spend at least 20% of their time coding. Solar roof managers must spend time on the roofs doing installations. Otherwise, they're like a general who can't use a sword or a leader who can't ride a horse. In other words, make sure that you're getting your hands dirty, make sure you're leading from the front, and make sure you know how to do the work that your team is doing so that you can fully understand what pain points your team may have. Being hands-on ensures that you know exactly what could go wrong, and when those things do go wrong, you can go with your team and help them fix it. Camaraderie is dangerous. It makes it hard for people to challenge each other's work. There is a tendency to not want to throw a colleague under the bus. That needs to be avoided. Now, this is one of those hardcore rules that Elon Musk has in place to ensure there is no friction when something goes wrong. I'm sure many of us have been at a workplace where something is happening and you kind of don't want to tell somebody because you don't want to hurt their feelings or your friends. And so it's very important to keep in mind that when you're trying to achieve a goal or a mission or trying to implement something that's greater than self, let's say, it's very important to be extremely honest with the people you're working with, even in the toughest times. And developing relationships with people that could place a barrier in achieving those goals could make things problematic. At the very least, it's very important to have this one in mind so that when a tough decision has to be made, feelings don't get in the way. It's okay to be wrong, just don't be confident and wrong. I experienced this one firsthand at Tesla 1,000 times. I must have failed, I don't know, 1 trillion times while I was working at the company, but this one's extremely important. Fear of being wrong should be deleted. Making sure this is in place allows people to try things, to experiment with things, to have crazy ideas that may sound crazy 99% of the time, but that 1% of the time could be something that's life-changing. It's very important to have no ego when this process is in place, but it maximizes for the best ideas to come forward. We're all human beings, we all make mistakes, we should allow ourselves to make mistakes. But we should never allow our egos to get in the way and just make something happen because our egos are hurt. Never ask your troops to do something you're not willing to do. This one's very straightforward. Be sure to always lead from the front. Whenever there are problems to solve, don't just meet with your managers. Do a skip level where you meet with the level right below your managers. This one's extremely important because it allows the people that are actually doing the work to tell you what's wrong or to highlight things that the manager might not be aware of because perhaps they're not being hands-on enough. And so never be afraid to talk to absolutely everybody on every team. Don't worry about the hierarchy thing or, oh, am I going to piss off this person because they're not my boss and they're somebody else's boss? Who cares? If you're trying to get something done, talk to the people that are actually doing the work. This will ensure that you're getting the best information possible to make a decision. When hiring, look for people with the right attitude. Skills can be taught. Attitude changes require a brain transplant. This one I can speak to directly. When I was at Tesla, we were super hardcore about getting people in the building that had the right attitude because we knew we could teach them how to use Excel, we could teach them a process, we could teach them the things that they need to know from a terminology standpoint. Experience is less important than you think in a lot of cases, and it's all about having the right attitude because the right attitude will allow you to put all these steps in place. And if you have someone with the wrong attitude, implementing these steps will become significantly harder. A maniacal sense of urgency is the operating principle. Everyone should be working as hard as they can at all times. This one's very difficult to implement unless you have a grand vision, a big mission statement that everybody can rally behind. If I use Tesla as an example, their mission statement is to transition the world to sustainable energy. SpaceX's mission is to move humanity to Mars and ensure that the light of consciousness doesn't burn out. These are massive, massive missions, but that inspires people to rally behind a common goal and come together and work as hard as they can to make that thing happen. And lastly, the only rules are the ones dictated by the laws of physics. Everything else is a recommendation. This one's tied very closely to the first step in the algorithm, which is question every requirement. The overarching theme here is that impossible things are actually possible. It just requires a lot of work, a lot of dedication, and knowing how to ask the right questions, which is exactly what this process does. And so having a mindset that anything is possible will allow you to implement these steps and be much more effective when executing them. Now, to wrap up the video, I'm going to leave you some life lessons that Elon and his brother Kimball came up with while playing the game Polytopia. Think of the lessons as a proper mental framework so that it gets you in the right mentality to implement all these steps. Here are the lessons. Play life like a game. Do not fear losing. Be proactive. Optimize every turn. Double down. Pick your battles. And unplug at times. Personally, the last one is the hardest one for me. I have a very hard time just shutting off my brain and relaxing. But from where I stand, these are great lessons to have the right mentality to work as hard as you can. And ultimately, that's my biggest takeaway from this methodology. Work as hard as you can. Find something that really resonates with you, something that you're super passionate about, something that you really can call your own, and work as hard as you can to make that thing happen. I want to thank Walter Isaacson and Elon Musk for allowing us to be a little bit of a fly on the wall in how he approaches business building, and I hope this video was informative and helpful. If you'd like to go above and beyond and support the channel, I have links to my merch in the description below, as well as a link to Athletic Greens, which is a supplement that I take every single morning. You'll get free travel packs and vitamin D with your purchase. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was informative and helpful, and we'll see you in the next one. Take it easy, everybody. Bye-bye.